We want to start talking about softening the skin within an image. And there's several different techniques that you can use to accomplish this. In fact, retouchers will almost argue about which technique is the best technique. You're going to have to kind of figure that out for yourself, but I'll show you a couple techniques that work well. With that being said, I will caution you not to soften or blur the skin too much. Oftentimes, if you see people doing a tutorial on this, they'll end up with an image that has the person looking like a plastic doll. They really take it way too far, and you don't want to do that. You always want to have some level of skin texture. The point here is to just soften the skin ever so slightly. You don't want to make the person look fake. So always keep that in mind when you're softening skin. In this example, we're going to look at a technique called inverted high pass. And if you know the high pass filter, which we've used before, it sharpens images. So if we're going to sharpen an image and then invert it, ultimately we end up with a softer image. So that's the technique that we're going to use. So the first thing that we want to do is duplicate the layer. That's easy. It's Command-J or Control-J on Windows. After doing that, we're going to change the blending mode. We're going to come over here and select something that you probably don't use that much, Vivid Light. And after changing the blend mode to Vivid Light, the first thing that we want to do is inverse this. We can inverse this by coming up to the Image menu, and from the Image menu, we can choose Adjustments, and then we can choose Invert. Command-I or Control-I is the keyboard shortcut, and we end up with this gray image, which is exactly what we want. The next thing that we want to do is we want to apply that high pass filter. So come up to the filter menu, and from the filter menu, you can choose Other, and then you can choose High Pass. This is going to open up a dialog box, and in this dialog box, you want your radius to be somewhere around the 24 pixel range, regardless of the image. You can modify it slightly, left or right, but for the most part, you want to be in this range. These are almost like a series of steps that make up a recipe to get this to work just right. So come over and click OK. And once you're done applying that filter, you want to come back to the filter menu, and from there you want to choose Blur, and we're going to apply a Gaussian blur. And we're going to be somewhere around the 3 pixel range for this. Again, a little less, a little more, that's up to you, but you want to be close to the 3 pixel range. And then you can come over and click OK. So we have this set up. It doesn't really look that great in terms of her skin tones. We don't have much texture. We do certainly have some texture, but it doesn't look realistic. So what we're going to do is double click on the layer thumbnail, and this is going to open up the layer style dialog box. And we want to come down here towards the bottom, and we want to use these blend if sliders. And you'll notice that we're looking at gray right here. This allows you to blend the image, well, in this case, this layer, with the layer underneath it conditionally. And so if we drag this slider to the right, and you want to make sure that the preview check mark is on, you'll notice that we're certainly making some changes here within the image, but look at what's happening. We're really kind of introducing some artifacts and some blotchy areas. That's not the best. Likewise, if we drag this slider to the left, we're going to get similar blotchy results. We're not going to get nice smooth transitions. You can kind of see these hard lines here. So what we can do is we can hold down the Option key on the Mac, Alt on Windows, and you'll see this little line here on each of these triangles. You can split this slider by holding down that Option key or Alt key on Windows. I'll click and drag this to the left, and as I do that, you'll notice I'm getting better results now with this conditional blend. Likewise, we can do the same thing with this slider. Again, hold down the Option key on the Mac, Alt on Windows, click and drag this to the right, and you'll notice, again, we're getting kind of like the result that we really want. And so once you're happy experimenting with these sliders, getting a pretty good result, you can come over and click OK. Once you click OK, we're not really done here. The skin looks pretty good, but we now have everything within the image looking pretty soft, and that wasn't the goal. The goal was to get the skin to look soft. So we're going to apply a mask, of course. Hold down the Option key on the Mac, Alt on Windows, and click the Add Layer Mask button down here towards the bottom. That entire effect is hidden. We're going to select the Brush tool. B is the keyboard shortcut. You want to be painting with white, and then you just want to come in and start painting over her face and over her skin. Now, it may be kind of subtle to you, and that's okay, but once you're done painting, you really will see the difference. The one thing that I will point out is you want to stay away from edges. Anywhere there's an edge, you don't really want to paint over that too much. And so I'm using a fairly large brush right now, so I can kind of get through this a little bit quicker, but you would spend more time on it if you are really retouching a photograph. And of course, you're going to have to adjust the brush size as you do this so you can get into some of the tighter locations. But like I said, you don't really want to paint over here by her nose. You want to kind of keep that a little less soft. So I'll just paint over the bridge of her nose. Looks like I forgot a few spaces over here. And we also have her neck to worry about, honestly. If we use the hand tool by holding down the space bar, we could also do the same to her neck area. I'll just go ahead and increase the brush so I can do it quickly. Again, you want to stay away from the edge of her jaw as much as possible because you still want that definition there. You want that definition of her jawline there. But nevertheless, that looks pretty good. If I go ahead and zoom out a little bit, you can see that the skin definitely looks softer. If you turn off the visibility of this layer, this is the before and this is the after. It's pretty subtle, but that's what you want. You want a subtle effect. We can still see skin texture, which is what we need. In fact, if you feel like you've taken this too far, and maybe I have, you can always reduce the opacity of the layer to bring back some of that detail within her skin. The only other thing that I'd like to point out is you can look at the mask that you've created by holding down the Option key on the Mac, Alt on Windows, and clicking on the mask, and you'll see what the mask looks like, and it looks kind of creepy. But you can see areas that you may have missed. If they're black like this, clearly we want to stay away from the eyes and the mouth and where her nose meets her face. But down here, we could certainly paint this in, and so we can kind of clean up all the spots that we've missed. And we probably could do some more work on her nose here. There's really no reason why we don't have the bridge of her nose completely soft. So I'll go ahead and just clean this up a little bit. And then we can turn the mask back on by holding down the Option key again. It's Alt on Windows. And now we see the result of our mask. So again, we can turn it off to see the before, and this is the after. It's a nice subtle effect. Her skin certainly looks softer, but she still looks like a human being, which is good.